Welcome everyone to the Governance and Transparency Committee meeting for today. All councillors are in attendance other than Councillor Johnnick, and I've been informed that she will be unable to attend, so I'd like to move a leave of absence for Councillor Johnnick. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Kunzelman. Put it to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous and carried. Ipswich City Council respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners as custodians of the land and waters we share. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging as the keepers of the traditions, customs, cultures and stories of proud people. Do any councillors have declarations of interest to make on the matter in the agenda? No? No business outstanding. I'll move to the confirmation of minutes. Any questions on the minutes? There being no questions, I'll seek a mover. Moved by Councillor Milligan, seconded by Councillor Doyle. Any discussion on those minutes this morning? There being no discussion, I'll proceed to the vote. All those in favour of adopting? That's unanimous and carried. Item 2 today is the annual review of delegations to the Chief Executive Officer. Are there any questions regarding this matter this morning? There being no questions, I'll seek a mover for the one recommendation. Moved by Councillor Doyle and seconded by Councillor Milligan. Any discussion this morning? There being no discussion, I'll proceed to the vote. Those in favour of adopting? That's unanimous and carried. The next item this morning is concession for general rates, 13 Thorn Street, Ipswich, Queensland 4305. Any questions regarding this matter this morning? There being no questions, I'll seek a mover for the one recommendation. Moved by Mayor Harding, seconded by Councillor Doyle. Any discussion this morning? There being no discussion, I'll proceed.
Yes, if I can, Chair, just to say strongly support this. Can provide wonderful support services in our community for young people and families, so I definitely will be supporting this.
Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, I'll proceed to the vote. Those in favour? That's unanimous and carried. Item 4 today is the concession for general rates, 12 Cole Street, Bundamba, Queensland, 4304. The one recommendation again. Any questions on this matter? Being no questions, I'll seek a mover. Moved by Councillor Doyle and seconded by Councillor Milligan. Any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, I'll proceed to the vote. Those in favour of adopting? That's unanimous and carried. Item 5 today is concession for general rates, 377 Binnies Road, Deebing Heights, Queensland 4306 and 239 Edwards Street, Flinders View, Queensland 4305. Similarly, the one recommendation. Any questions on this one? There being no questions, I'll seek a mover. Moved by Councillor Doyle, seconded by Councillor Kunzelman. Any discussion this morning on this matter? There being no discussion, I'll proceed to the vote. Those in favour of adopting? That's unanimous and carried. Item 6 this morning is a procurement matter, the supply and delivery of waste collection and compaction trucks. Are there any questions for the relevant officers on this? There being no questions, I'll seek a mover for recommendation A through D. Moved by Mayor Harding and seconded by Councillor Milligan. Any discussion this morning?
Yes, please, Chair.
Mayor.
If I may, this is a very important purchase, an investment of over $5 million. Our council continues to grow at a rapid pace, so it's great to see that we are planning ahead, so we provide this essential service to our residents, especially as we are in catch-up. $5.3 million is a lot of money to spend in difficult times, but these purchases are being done with the high growth profile in mind of our city, and these additional trucks will ensure that we're able to offer a consistent and efficient service over the next 5 to 7 years. This council has already invested in an entire fleet of 28 waste trucks over the past 3 years to the value of $12.6 million. That was in part to replace an ageing fleet that was at the end of its useful life, which I think we're still using that fleet as well, and we are now finally catching up with having a full serviceable fleet and making up for that shortfall from, I guess, the previous non-investment. We know that we have FOGO rolling out across the city next year. We must get this in order now so that we have this done, so we can all ensure timely deliveries of these trucks so we can prevent any delays and missed bins in the future. So very proud of this council, and thank you to the organisation for planning for the future, and that we won't shy away from doing what needs to be done to make sure we can deliver proper services to the residents of our region. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Any further discussion this morning? There being no further discussion, I'll put recommendation A through D to the vote. Those in favour of adopting? That's unanimous and carried. Item 7 today is another procurement matter, the Indigenous Conservation and Land Management. Two-part recommendation, A and B. Any questions of the relevant officers this morning? There being no questions, I'll seek a mover for A and B together. Moved by Councillor Milligan and seconded by Councillor Kunzelman. Any discussion this morning on this matter? There being no discussion, I'll proceed to the vote. Those in favour of adopting A and B? That's unanimous and carried. Item 8 today is the disposal of council freehold land bulk decision for 9 lots identified as access restriction strips within the Ipswich City Council local government area. Are there any questions on this item this morning? There being no questions, I'll seek a mover for recommendation A through E. Moved by Councillor Kunzelman, seconded by Councillor Milligan. Any discussion this morning? There being no discussion, I'll proceed to the vote. Those in favour of adopting? That's unanimous and carried. Item 9 this morning is the disposal of interest in land for easement purpose over part of 64 Brisbane Terrace, Goodna. Any questions this morning on this matter? There being no questions, I'll seek a mover for recommendation A and B. Moved by Mayor Harding and seconded by Councillor Doyle. Any discussion this morning? There being no discussion, I'll proceed to the vote. Those in favour of adopting? That's unanimous and carried. Item 10 today is leases for renewal over freehold and trust land to the Scout Association of Australia Queensland Branch Incorporated. It's a 5-part recommendation. Any questions on this matter? There being no questions, I'll seek a mover for recommendation A through E. Moved by Councillor Kunzelman and seconded by Councillor Milligan. Any discussion? Mayor?
If I may, thank you very much, Chair. Note that the Scouting movement is continuing to grow. We were, last night the Deputy Mayor was scarfed as a supporter of Scouts. And obviously yourself, Chair, you've been very involved with the Ripley group that's opened up as well. So good to see some more land here. This is a movement that provides adventurous training for young people and potential future leaders of tomorrow as well. So it'd be great to see all 3 levels of government work together to get some great facilities for for the Scouts.
Thank you, Mayor. Any further discussion this morning? There being no further discussion, I'll seek to move to the vote for A through E. Those in favour of adopting? That's unanimous and carried. Item 11 today is an iVolve program update, just a report. Any questions on this matter this morning? There being no questions, I'll seek a mover. It's moved by Mayor Harding and seconded by Councillor Doyle. Any discussion this morning? Mayor Harding?
If I may, Chair. Look, I know that the Audit and Risk Management Committee keep a close eye on this particular project, as you would expect any organisation implementing an enterprise resource system like this. And obviously I have regular discussions with the Chair of the Audit and Risk Management Committee and look over this as well. But yeah, it's good to see this going. It's good to see the Oracle Fusion project being, that kick-off happening. And just look forward to the benefits that the residents of Ipswich will get as our systems become easy to use and the improvements in our service delivery.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just further to the Mayor's comments, Audit and Risk Committee meeting this week, we had a presentation and an update around iVolve, and it was really exciting to hear some of the examples of, better and improved customer service delivery out of iVolve. I know we're still a little way off achieving that, however the hard work is being done, and I'm really impressed with the outcome so far and so looking forward. Yeah, some really great projects underway which will really impact positively customer service out of Ipswich City Council.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Any further discussion this morning? There being no further discussion, I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour of adopting? That's unanimous and carried. Item 12 today is the iVolve Program Strategic Advisor Report for May 2023. Any questions on this report? There being no questions, I'll seek a mover. Moved by Mayor Harding and seconded by Councillor Doyle. Any discussion?
If I may, Chair. I do appreciate the independent advice from the strategic advisor on this. Most organisations wouldn't have native skills in people who are rolling out ERP, so we do rely on this quite a bit. So no, thank you for these reports, and I obviously pore over them, as the CEO knows, I think it's great that we're sharing this with residents as well.
Thank you, Mayor. Any further discussion this morning? There being no further discussion, I'll proceed to the vote. Those in favour of adopting? That's unanimous and carried. Item 13 today is a late report, the proposed derivatives policy, which I understand we're required to have by some state legislation. Are there any questions this morning? Call on Mr. Mollenhauer.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor and Councillors. Paul Mollenhauer, Council's Treasury Accounting Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Through the chair, if I may, I guess I've got two questions. One is wanting to know why this is a late report and so on. But do you mind also speaking to it in layman's terms why we're having this policy introduced?
Sure. So as a brief timeline, the state came to us back in February with an EOI to be included in a schedule of the regulation of the Statutory Bodies Financial Arrangements Act, effectively allowing us to proceed under a general approval to enter into derivative transactions. I don't think it's unkind to say that the state were moving at speed to try and get this done, and I think they had a couple of stumbling blocks themselves. It wasn't until early May that they came back to us and actually requested a policy. We had a bit of backwards and forwards with the state at an officer level trying to work out timeframes. We had requested a 27 July, which will be our July council meeting, for approval of the policy. They came back to us and said, no, that's not soon enough. We want it by the 15th of June. We had a little bit more backwards and forwards because obviously that was then not going to meet with our existing 22 June arrangements for council. And then it's only on the 23rd of May that they came back and finally confirmed to us that if we were to withdraw from the EOI now, we would then be precluded from entering into any derivative transactions under the general approval or under a specific approval. So at that point, we made the decision to bring the development of the policy forward in quite an accelerated way.
Thank you for explaining why, because I don't like late reports, so thank you very much for...
No, it certainly was something we didn't want to do, but
thank you.
Under circumstances.
Under circumstances, yes, it had to be that way. What are the benefits of having this policy?
So again, in short, and please, if I'm going too far, you can let me know, but we're limiting this policy to financial derivatives that are intended to hedge foreign currency exposure. We're not worried about other hedging transactions in this regard. There's an increasing trend in a procurement sense that contracts that are sourced from Australia but can potentially be based overseas. Purchase of trucks, for example, would be a good example, depending on where the trucks are located. You can start to see an increasing trend of actually having an underlying pricing. And so even though we might pay our contracts in Australian dollars, they will be the underlying price could be in foreign currency. What a derivative will allow us to do is actually hedge against currency movements and provide greater budget certainty for us. In really, again, short example, a 5-point movement in exchange rates between, say, Australian and US dollars, for every 5 cents that moves, 5 points that moves, could be $50,000 on $1 million contract. So it's worthwhile us doing it. It's also worth noting, though, at the moment, we don't have a lot of exposure in this regard, but it is a growing trend.
That's what I was going to ask what our exposure was, but I guess we can have that chat later.
It's difficult to quantify at this point in time. We don't have a huge level of understanding of it. It is growing. And it is a growing trend. I think we will, as we go forward, see more and more contracts written with what they effectively refer to as dual currency pricing, and then greater clarity around underlying pricing. So
would it be fair to say that this potentially could save our residents money because we won't be paying probably above and beyond to make sure our contracts are in Australian dollars? Or
it has the potential to save us money. From a currency risk perspective, you have upside and downside risks. And so in the first instance, it's about providing greater certainty for budgeting purposes, for forward budgeting. We need to be careful that we don't use it in a speculative way, and the policy is written very specifically that we're not using it for speculative purposes. I don't carry a level of expertise in that regard yes, we understand what derivatives are from a financial perspective, but that's, again, the policy will lean very heavily back to QTC as the state's treasurer in providing guidance for us in terms of how to use those tools, but also when to use those tools. The key decision around a currency hedge is effectively having a view about where those prices are likely to move over a period of time.
Okay. And have Queensland Treasury Corp reviewed this policy and given their approval or anything like that?
As a draft policy, no. We have rushed it, brought it forward. It will now, subject to today's meeting, go off to the state and QTC as part of a draft, and we've been very clear with them that it's still got to get through our 22 June council meeting to be finally approved.
And that's obviously an opportunity for them to come back to us as well?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. As a policy, we can bring it back to you at any time for amendment, whether that amendment be driven internally or externally, that's not a concern.
Thank you, Mr Mulliner. Thank you, Chair.
Any further questions for Mr. Mollenhauer? Thank you.
Cheers.
All right, so we've got one recommendation this morning. I'll seek a mover from the floor. Moved by Councillor Doyle, seconded by Councillor Kunzelman. Any discussion? There being no discussion, I'll proceed to the vote. Those in favour of adopting, that's unanimous and carried. That was our last report this morning. I've got no notices of motion or matters arising. Before declaring the meeting over, seek the advice of the committee on what you'd like to do regarding the next break. How long would you like it to be?
Is 30 minutes okay? 30 minutes. Request that, Chair.
If you're happy to propose
I propose a 30-minute break or adjournment.
All right, moved by Mayor Harding, seconded by Councillor Doyle. I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's unanimous and carried. Yep, I'll call the meeting to a close at 10:09, and the next meeting will commence at 10:39.